we have three topics today. The Sean Franklin presentation on non-rectangular modules will be rescheduled for a later time. Roger Litwiller has some interesting work he's done in the modeling area on rolling stock, and it's called about his Nova Scotia trailer. So Roger, if you're on, ready to go, you can take maybe even up to 15 minutes if you want to, because we got a little extra time.
Sure. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for asking me to present today. I'm really quite excited to be here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about creating custom truck trailers. And this is something that's not new. Lots of people have done it, but this is the way I have done it. And there's probably a few here in the meeting that have done it themselves. So for myself, I'm in Canada, Ontario, Canada. And being a Canadian model railroader, especially in N scale, selection is limited. You know, even though there's tons of different models and road names and rolling stock and locomotives, you know, pretty much in the Canadian aspect, we're limited to Canadian National and Canadian Pacific railroads and a few other, you know, smaller lines. But when it comes to making a layout Canadian specific, it's very hard to find those uniquely Canadian things. So how do we go from, you know, a picture of an actual truck to a model on our layout? Rule number one, anytime you leave the house, carry a camera. Very important. You can't take a picture if you don't have a camera. And in this day and age, there's lots of options available. Cell phones are good, but they still don't match the quality of photo that you can take with an actual camera. The point and shoots are better, but ultimately the full digital high-end camera will give you your clearest picture. The next important thing to do is change the settings on either your camera or your cell phone. You want to take a photo that is at its highest resolution possible. And the reason being, most cell phones and many cameras, the saving of that photo is actually done at a very low resolution. It will look great on your camera screen. It will look good on your computer screen. But when it comes time to printing, you get a lot of artifact and a lot of pixelization. So you want to get the highest resolution file that you can when you take your photos. So next, when that opportunity presents itself and there's something really unique that you want to try and model, you get your camera and you want to get pictures of all sides of the trailer from a 90-degree angle or as close to 90 degrees as you can. And that helps with giving you a better quality photo to start. Now, inherent into photography is what we see with our eyes is not what the camera lens will produce. So when you take that photo, there's always a certain amount of distortion. When you look at that truck from the side, it looks nice and straight top and bottom. The lens sees it and puts a slight curve into the center, a concave into the center at the top and the bottom. Also, if you are lower than your subject, it will also create a trapezoid effect where the bottom of your subject will be wider than the top. So one of the ways to remediate that is to be as far back from your subject as you can. The further you are, it reduces some of that distortion, and the higher you can raise your camera, so you're taking more from a center position, will reduce that trapezoid effect. But we'll fix these problems later on. And you can see with the arrows here just how much of a distortion there is in these photos. So next, when you're ready to start the project, you need to select the type of decal material you're going to use. There are several products from different manufacturers. I've used all of these expert choice testers and microscale. They all work fine. The difference is the size of the decal sheet. Expert choice has a standard letter size, whereas testers and microscale are smaller. And in your document editing program, you actually have to create the size of the decal sheet so that you're printing on the same size as the sheet. The other consideration is, do you want to use an inkjet printer or a laser printer? And the decals are made specific to the two types of printer. And if it's a laser decal paper, don't bother trying to use it in an inkjet. It just won't work. Laser printing will get you your cleanest, clearest decal. So, actual physical aspects, you need to start by cleaning your material. Most of the trucks all come with something printed on them, so that needs to come off. Otherwise, you're going to get ridges from that previous painting showing through your model. So you want to start removing paint. Depending on the manufacturer will depend on the type of remover you use. I've used nail polish remover, actual paint thinner, and paint stripper. But you want to make sure you're rinsing your model often, and warm soapy water as well. And there's always a good chance that you may distort or damage the plastic. Once I have the paint removed, I give a good coat of a gloss paint. Depending on the base coat, it'll either be white, or if the trailer is brown, I'll use a gloss brown or a gloss black, anything like that. Next, as we all know, different manufacturers have different dimensions when it comes to their models. So you need to choose your trailer that you're going to use, and you need to measure it. And you need the length of the box, the height of the box, and you also need to measure the rear of the trailer as well. And that could be different dimensions from your sides. So you need to pay attention to all dimensions on all three sides. So now comes your photo. Unless you can get the driver of the truck to turn the truck around so that when you take the photo, the sun is always behind you, all three photos are going to have different lighting. So in a photo editing program, and I use Photoshop for myself, but there's lots of photo editing programs. Any one will do the trick. You need to change the lighting of your subject so that you match as closely as you can to all three photos, and they won't all be exactly the same. Next, you want to start removing the distortion. And in Photoshop, there's a lens correction filter. And in there, I can adjust the horizontal aspect, rotate it so that I can level out the subject matter. I can also change the trapezoid appearance. So if the bottom of the model is larger than the top, I can then change that and bring so that the top and the bottom are the same size, and then eventually square it off. And you can see the gray area on the outside of the three sides here, this side, the very top, and the very bottom, is how much that photo had to be edited to get the subject to actually lay flat. So, and play with it. You know, so if it works, great. If it doesn't, start again. It's not a big deal. From there, I save that image as a JPEG as is, including the gray area. And I open it up in my document editing program. And for my work, I use Microsoft Publisher, which is very common for anyone that has Office. And I open a page the same size as my decal sheet. letter size if it's expert choice, or create a decal sheet the size of testers or micro scale. And I place the photo as is on the page. And from there, I crop the area that I want to use for my decal. And it will still be oversized, but you can see in this photo, the actual truck side is quite flat and very level. So I crop that. And then using the format for the box, I can then adjust the size of that photo to the size of the decal that I want to produce. And in this case here, my truck side was 1.5 centimeters high exactly. So this, from the top here to the bottom here, I was able to make 1.5 centimeters in height. Now, the length of this decal does not matter because in the original photo, the prototype, that truck side only extended about 3/4 of the side of the actual truck. So the length of this particular decal doesn't matter. If you're doing the entire truck side, you may have to crop a little bit off the back and the front of your decal to get it to fit. And so once I've got one side done, then I do that with the other side of the truck and the back of the truck. And for this model, I was quite fortunate. The graphics were exactly the same on both sides and were a mirrored image. So they both get played. On the right side of the truck, the bagpiper and the tall ship is at the rear of the trailer. And on the other side of the truck, the piper is at the front of the trailer. Some of the trailers will be completely reversed. So it will take creating two sides and then also adding the back side. When you lay it out on your decal paper, you want to make sure you've got room to cut between your decals. Now, you can see here, I've got this truck in the center of this decal sheet, but it's a waste of money to print just one decal on a letter size paper. So I always try and fill the paper with as many projects as I can and print them in one shot. The other thing I do is I create several areas on the decal sheet that I'm not going to use as a decal. And a good example is here where it says clear decal film. These labels, these were some Canadian armored units that I was making. This is a particular type of tank. So I won't be using these. Same with up here, I will not be using that. And I'll explain that in a second. So next comes the printing. So you print off your sheets, whether you take them in to get them laser printed or print them off at home if you have a good printer. Get them printed, and then you need to seal them. So a micro scale liquid decal film is an excellent substance. You can either brush it on. I prefer to do light coats with an airbrush, keeping the film as thin as possible so I don't build up the height of my decal. And this is where those non-usable printed sections come in. After I spray a coat and it's had time to dry, I will dab a little bit of micro set, decal set, onto those non-printed areas. And if the ink runs, I know I need to add additional coats. If the ink doesn't run, then I know my decals are sealed and I'm ready to move on. There's nothing worse than spending all this time creating decals, printing them off. You go to put them into the water and you watch all your ink run into the water. So it's worthwhile to take the time and make sure they're well sealed. So once you got to this point, everything else that follows is just like doing any other decals on any other project. You cut your decals out with a nice sharp knife, apply them to your model. I put a little micro set down before I lay the decal down, just to help with positioning. And once all the decals are in place, you give them time to dry. And I follow that with some microsol, which helps adhere the decals to the model. And once the decals are completely dry, then I spray with either a dull coat or a gloss coat or something in between. And that helps seal the decals. It also removes the decal lines and prevents the decals from curling as the model ages. So it's really not as difficult as it sounds. And to give you a good example, this was one of the first ones that I did. Some will recognize the Tim Hortons coffee brand here in Canada. A lot of trailers for Tim Hortons around the country, and great picture of one of their smaller trailers. And I followed through all the processes and created my decals, got them printed, got them on my model, and that was the end result. So don't be discouraged if it doesn't work the first time. Play with it, enjoy it, develop it, figure it out, and have fun. Eventually, you will come with a product that you will be very, very pleased with. And I keep this model on my layout because so often I have visitors come over and look at what I've done and, oh my, I can't do that. And I bring this trailer out, say, yeah, you can. This is what I started with, and this is what I end up with. And this is one of the ITS trucks here in Canada that did a tribute to our Canadian military. And I was able to get all three sides of the truck and produce this decal from it. So it can be done. You just need to have some patience, be willing to make mistakes, and start again when things don't go well. The advantage to this system is it can be adapted to be used anywhere in your layout. And this is my locomotive repair shop. And all these signs you see I created myself. My personal favorite is in the top left corner there. That is the standard poster of the steam engine coming through the wall of the station. And, just with the document editing, I added safety is a choice, not a chance, and the CN logo. So play with it, have fun, be creative, make mistakes, and it's a skill that you'll be able to use and truly personal, create a personal touch on your own home layouts. Materials, fairly simple: decal paper, liquid decal film, microset, microsol, a sharp knife, tweezers, and the software, any photo editing program and any document processing program will work. And that's about it for me.
All right, Roger, thank you very much. We usually at this time take one or two questions, and then we'll move on. If we have more questions, we'll have them at the end. So is there anyone who has a question for Roger right now?
What about white letters?
Ask again.
Oh, white letters? Unless your printer has white ink, and there are some out there that do white ink, but they are extremely expensive. You're kind of out of luck. So what I do for that is I get the white background decal paper, and I will reverse and put my letters in clear so that they don't print, but create the background in the color that I need on the trailer. So the like that Tim Hortons one there with the white lettering, that will actually be on a white decal paper.
Okay.
And the browns will match the browns in the paint that I use on the trailer. So it's kind of approaching it from the other side of the production aspect, almost like a negative idea.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to proceed now with our next presentation. Our old buddy, looks like it's Canadian Day today. We have two of our Canadian compadres. Terry, let's talk some T-TRAK.
Sounds like a plan. This month, we're going to talk about some painting panel modules. T-TRAK modules are hard to find, so you may need to look in the strangest places. These wooden painting panels were mentioned on social media a while ago. This 3-pack came wrapped in cellophane, with each panel also individually wrapped. Although not perfect, they are good by mass production standards. With T-TRAK module kits hard to come by recently, those panels are an alternative and readily available for the construction of single modules with a little additional woodworking. The actual size is 11 15/16 by 11 15/16 inches. And these were only slightly out of square, but no more than many T-TRAK modules. Bases for single modules at 308 millimeters or 12 1/8 inches are 3/16 inch longer than these panels, but that can be corrected by adding thin strips of wood to one end. Attaching the module legs. The legs are just lengths of 2x2 lumber cut to length, which is determined by the thickness of the deck sheet and the hardware used for height adjustment. These wooden painting panels are simply glued together, no indication of any mechanical attachment being nail screws or brads. So the gluing in of the legs will only help to strengthen the module's base. Just a bunch of clamps and some carpenter's wood glue. With the legs attached and the hardware added, I use 5/16 inch T-nuts and hex head bolts. Overkill, since most people just use 1/4 inch hardware, but this is a throwback to my N-TRAK days. The module compared to a normal module has a large open space beneath. With a module constructed height of 2 3/4 inches, the 1 1/2 inch depth of the painting panels leaves a 1 1/4 inch gap, even before the module is raised to the 3 1/2 inch setup height. Lots of room for cables and easy leg height adjustment. As mentioned before, the panels are 1/16 inch shy of 12 inches, making them 3/16 inch shy of a proper single module length. That shortfall, plus the 2 millimeter space between perfect modules, leaves a 1/4 inch gap, or about 3/16 of an inch too much. That gap can be reduced by simply adding a thin strip of wood to one end to make up the difference. To lengthen my new single modules, I simply glued 1 1/2 by 12 inch strips of 1/8 inch hardboard to one end. It's what I had on hand, so it works fine. The thick piece of plywood in the photo simply spreads the clamping forces across the whole face of the end of the module. Afterwards, some sanding work will make the added material all but disappear after painting. For those of you who like to model sub-level scenes, shorten the legs by the thickness of your styro sheet or height of the bridge you wish to use. Although gluing track to styro or whatever material is common, I prefer to mount to wood, so I added a wooden base for my track with styro on both sides. That gap you can see will be hidden. I just simply didn't have a piece of wood that was the full length. Using added material on top of the deck for scenery also lowers the wooden edges, removing the large gap under the module by the thickness of the added material. All aspects of the wooden painting panels as modules can be seen here. With a little of the usual woodworking required as any modules are built, reasonably suitable modules can be created. Only the large space below the module may be questioned, but that space can be lessened by various methods of decorating as the module is scenic. 1/4-inch T-nuts and bolts have been added for plexi guards and skyboards. Power feeders may not be required on single modules, but they are handy when included in layout module runs with few connections. I have a tendency to wire every straight module in my in my list of stuff. And you'll notice the bolts, I cut about 1/4 inch off the end of those bolts, which still left me plenty of adjustment space. And it meant then that the bolt would not protrude up into the styro that will be mounted there. Okay, so now that I've got them, what am I going to do with them? I have a couple of Woodland Scenics buildings that don't have a purpose until now. The gas station will be Cisco Clifton's filling station after an old Johnny Cash song. One will be Trains Don't Stop Here No More, an abandoned train station, which means destroying the woodland module. The adjusted height module will be one of my first attempts at styro modeling, inspired by the Mink Tunnel, a small single-track rock bore on the railroad just east of here. Bottom line, like them or not, I'll have 3 new T-TRAK single modules for a lot less work. Time has passed. Set at 3.5-inch pre-height, if the gap under the module on the right is considered excessive, a skirt could be added, or the bottom 2 3/4 inches, or as required, depending on your build, of the security panel can be painted to match other normal modules. Painting panel modules painted, track mounted, and wired, skyboards and security panels created, scenery under construction. And again, that's it for this month. Thanks for watching.
Very good, Terry. Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions for Terry, short ones that we can answer?
Yep.
Go ahead.
What source in Canada did he get those panels?
Those, just like everybody else, came from Amazon, and they came from the States. Those particular panels are the exact ones that were promoted on social media that started all this in the first place. There are several other sizes available too, by the way, but the whole idea was to come up with something that could be used by, say, Cubs, Guides, Future Farmers of America, some kind of youth program that could build modules. The actual hardest part of building a module is building the base, doing the sides and ends and top. So with these, the sides, end, and top are already done. It's very simple just to add the legs and do the minor woodworking that you wish to do for your own particular need.
Thank you.
All right.
I have another,
Go
I have a
ahead.
comment
Go ahead.
on the artist board modules. We've been playing with them here in DC. The 9x12s actually are really cheap. You can get them for about $3 each. And for a beginner, it's great because it knocks down the amount of space they have to do scenicking on and buildings and things like that. And at $3, it's super cheap. The other addition we did was we're playing with using number 1020 threaded inserts, which are used for rivets. It's a smaller bolt, about half the size of a 1/4-inch bolt. But these little rivets are about 2 cents each. You just drill a 3/16 inch hole You can just tap them in with a hammer pressure fit. They've actually got some little ribs on the side, so they go right in, a lot easier than a T-nut to put in. So all the user has to do is drill 3 or 4 of these 3/16" holes in that rather thick thing, and then have a much thinner, lighter, cheaper bolt to put in. So you can knock the cost down to these things with TRAK to under $10. It's just something to think about for groups like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, things like that, that want to, do a bunch of these, but get it economical and sort of do the minimal space that you can get done in a shorter amount of time. And, and that learning, that first go around at scenery is always the big thing, to keep it small, keep it simple. And if you screw up, you can scrape it up and start over.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. And
Excuse
thank
me,
you, Terry.
Razor,
Yes.
just to interrupt, Jeff, would you mind writing up something and sending it to our editor so that we can put it in the newsletter? Because I think we really want to get the word out to people that there is this kind of thing for kids.
Yeah, I've been
And
sorry, I've
other
been neglected
groups
getting that done for you guys, and I'll get that done here over the holidays, and try to get that idea of what's the simplest, smallest, cheapest thing you could possibly get somebody going with.
Great, thank you.
All right. And Chuck's going to start talking about some scenery concepts that match the award-winning T-TRAK modules that the Oklahoma N-TRAK group just submitted and won a prize for. All right, Chuck, you ready to rock and roll?
I'll give it a try, Razor.
I know you can do it, my friend, so take off.
Okay. My name is Chuck Peterson, and I'm with the Oklahoma N-Rail Model Train Organization. Late last spring, we became aware of a contest that was being sponsored by Walthers to create modules and submit them for entry to see, who had the best modules that they could do. There were several different categories. The one we entered was the adult N scale event. And we thought, well, we could do this, and it'd be a great opportunity for several people within our organization to come together and work together to create a module. Our first goal was to try and figure out what is it that we would like to model. And Walthers had several different offerings. You had to utilize some of their buildings in the module. And we took a look at all those, and one of the guys said, hey, let's do Sayre, Oklahoma. Anyway, I personally thought, okay, Sayre, Oklahoma, that sounds exciting. Maybe not, but as we started taking a look at the different structures that were out in Sayre, which I'll show you in a minute, it became apparent that, hey, maybe this isn't a bad idea. Plus, it is something that represents Oklahoma that we thought was real important with the themes that we like to try and stick with. So anyway, we entered it and into the Walthers National Model Railroad Build-Off, and lo and behold, we got first place in the adult N category. So we were very excited about that. It was quite unexpected. Anyway, what I thought I would do today with you is kind of go through how our module was constructed and the scenery was created to come up with this particular module that we didn't expect to win, but we somehow were able to pull that off. Anyway, we talked a little bit about what we decided to construct, the steps in constructing the module, placing of all the infrastructure that we had on the module, creating topography and the scenery and landscape detail. This is a picture of the Oscar Eaton grain elevator out in Sayre, Oklahoma. And we'd already built the module, but I was traveling through Sayre on the way back from Colorado, and I thought I'd stop in, and I was able to take this picture of the grain elevator, which you will soon see that many of the pieces that we use look almost exactly like this. The other thing that you found in Sayre is the old Rock Island train depot has been refurbished, and it's been repurposed as the Shortgrass Country Museum. But this is the railroad station that just sits adjacent across the railroad tracks from the grain elevator. Okay, the first thing we did after deciding that we were going to do the Sayre, Oklahoma module was that how were we going to do it? We decided to construct a Fremo in standard for our layout. Started out by making a 2 foot by 3 foot base, and then we installed these dowel legs. I believe this was a discussion that Lee Williams may have presented to this particular organization a few meetings back, if I'm not mistaken. But they work very well for leveling and raising and lowering the height of the module to match up with adjacent modules that you might hook into. Okay, our layout configuration. Well, we had decided on several of these buildings that were in a package from Walthers, which had included the Farmers Grain Co-op grain elevator, Valley Growers Association grain elevator, State Line Farm Supply building, which isn't shown in this particular picture, as well as the Santa Fe Brick Mission Depot, again not shown here, and some grain bins that we were able to add to it. The building and track siding placement that was then kind of a question mark as to how we were going to particularly lay this out. So this shows us just essentially kind of playing around with it, trying to figure what our configuration would look like. Now the terrain is generally flat and uninspiring here in this particular area. So I thought we would put in an addition of a drainage creek, which we do happen to see pictures of a drainage creek that runs through this general area. And we ran it parallel to a roadway, which was Route 66, the obligatory Route 66 highway addition to your module. So we cut out our channel drainage on our top piece that we were going to adhere to the frame, laying out the length of the drainage ditch in here. We cut some extruded styrofoam, probably 2-inch thick styrofoam, and carved it out a bit to create the ditch itself. And then after we had that installed, we attached a 1/4 inch, was it a 1/4 inch, Bruce, or 3/16 or what? Anyway, the
1/4 inch.
It was what?
1/4 inch.
It was a 1/4 inch plywood sheeting, and adhered it with Pro-Bond glue on the top. You can see we have it being held by some clamps here on the side as we're gluing it down. This piece up here hadn't been glued down quite yet. Okay, so now at this point in time, we've got the surface glued down to the frame, and we're starting to think about the main line railroad track that we ran through here, trying to figure out exactly where to place it. And we're using, I guess it's probably a 1/16 inch model wood that you can get at Hobby Lobby or other places like that, to be the road bed for the main line itself. Okay, once we had installed the main line, which you can see running through here like this, we stained the entire surface so that we didn't have any difficulties with moisture seeping in and creating any warping or anything like that. Now, the other thing is we also installed the Highway 66 road bed, which ran laterally across here and is being held down by these weights. And then we placed a styrofoam bridge that I carved over here for access between the highway and where our elevators are going to be. Finally, we textured the drainage ditch with Activa brand Fast Mache, which I found works very well for creating natural surfaces, ground surfaces. One thing that you can do with this Fast Mache is you can add some paint color to it so that the entire thickness, which normally is white, and you can see maybe a little bit right here, is maybe a ground cover color that you might like to have. Obviously, there's the weight that Bruce insisted we put on here so that the highway didn't move or drift while the glue dried. Okay, once again, we're still kind of playing around with the placement of the buildings. You can see here's the train depot over here, and we got the buildings for the Oscar Eaton grain elevators on this side here. This isn't the final location, but it kind of gave us our general idea of what we wanted for the placement. Okay, we then added some filler along the sides of the railroad tracks because this was been kind of a squared off corner here where the road bed of the railroad track was. So we're trying to create kind of a sloped effect off of the road bed of the railroad tracks to the ground level. Did the same thing up here with the highway too, to give it the kind of the sloped effect of the shoulder of a road. We also glued down the tracks in place, you can see here, and we're holding them down with this very, very strong masking tape, this painter's tape, but it seemed to work quite well. As we had actually glued down the railroad tracks, I wanted to add some special feature to it here. So what I did was I put in a couple of railroad trestles under each of these two tracks that I actually built and stained using just some hobby wood that you can get. And then the concrete abutments on either side of the ditch are just made out of the extruded styrofoam and then painted to look like concrete abutments. Okay, this kind of goes through a couple steps past where we were here just a few moments ago, but all the natural ground surfaces that you see here, mostly in green, and then you've got the drainage ditch also, we applied Fast Mache to it to create kind of the slightly uneven ground surfaces. You can have little hills and valleys out in these particular natural areas that looks more natural by using that. Then we painted the Fast Mache with a soil color. Our soil color out here in western Oklahoma tends to be the red dirt that you would expect in Oklahoma. So we covered it with kind of a red colored paint. You can also, again, add that color to the Fast Mache and skip that particular step if you want. But I have found that actually painting the surface of Fast Mache makes it more durable. Then, after placing a thin layer of white glue, I dusted it with sifted soil dust, which is real soil filtered through a silk stocking. It's very, very fine dust and provides a real natural look of soil to the surface of your module. In this particular case, you can see little remnants of it here on the side of the road, down here in the bottom of the creek, on the edge of the parking lots, and a few spots out here in the middle of the field, which is very common what you see out in real life when you're looking at just ground out the ground cover out in the and natural. Now, after applying the soil, I went ahead and added another thin layer of glue, on top of which I added fine grass covering that you would get from Woodland Scenics. And they've got several different colors. I particularly like this kind of, it's kind of a burnt grass green, or somewhat of a light green, as a first base. That's not all I do. Now, as far as driveways, parking lots, I will actually not add any fast mache to those particular surfaces, as I want them to look relatively flat. Again, I apply a thin glue layer on top of that, and then apply a fine gray ballast. Oh, you might want to pre-paint it kind of a gray color underneath, and then apply the gray ballast to give it kind of that gravel parking lot type of look. Little bit of the red dirt soil, you can kind of dust around it to give it a more realistic look, as the parking lots weather and get dirt and dust that's blown on the wind. Then we began adding the scenery to it. We constructed and painted the railroad station. Again, that's the Rock Island station. And we made sure, I think the gentleman that did this particular module, or this particular model of the railroad station for us, he probably had to paint it 2 or 3 times, because we told him it didn't look quite exactly like what the pictures were that we had from the 1960s that we were trying to duplicate. And he was a real good sport about that, and was able to do that. The other elevators were again painted to look similar to what the Oscar Ewing elevators looked like out there in Sayre. Okay, we glued the structures to the surface and then backfilled the gravel up to the edge of the building, so that they blended in very nicely with the rest of the parking lot. Then we weathered the buildings, and I used a Vallejo rust and stain paint, which you see over here on the right side, and that helped us create kind of the rusted streak looks there that you might see on the elevator, the rusty looks of the elevator portion of the, I'm not sure what they call those, Bruce, these towers, elevator towers. And then the streaking of rust that is weathering down the side of the building due to rainstorms and whatnot. And then I also used this Tamiya pastels to create any kind of grime type look that might be near the base of the buildings, a little bit maybe on the side of the railroad station too, to give it a little bit better aged look. Okay, then we added some additional ground covers here. You might recall that I had just one standard fine grass Woodland Scenics ground cover on there, but then we began adding other applications of static grass, some coarse ground cover, and some underbrushes in here, and you can see that there's a variety of colors and textures that fall in here on the ground. Then the trees were actually made from Western sagebrush trimmings, to which I applied some coarse ground cover to create the leaf effect. Now, of course, the wood posts right here essentially delineate the difference between the parking lot and the station walkways. They're actually made from round toothpicks, which I cut about 1/4 inch long and sanded the top off. I stained them and then drilled holes and planted them into the module here to give it that edge of the parking lot type of look. Structure detail, we added the grain bins, which were given a rusted, weathered look. I installed electrical utility poles, telephone poles. You can see those here, along with the electrical wiring. They go across the back between the train station and the railroad tracks here. And then we added other small details like baggage carts, the telephone booth over here on the side, a number of cars and people. I also put in some weeds and grasses that you might find around the perimeter of some of these buildings. You can see some over here by the elevator, a couple here on the corners of the train station, which is something that you'll oftentimes see if you're looking at a building that hasn't been kept up immaculately. This is another view showing the details, especially in the ground cover and the trees. This is a piece of the western sage right here that I put in to model what might be a dead tree that has fallen branches on it. And I think those kind of additions look really good and realistic. Now here's the grain elevator yard. Got a grain truck right here and actually filled this with some wheat colored looking ballast to make it look like real wheat that's being delivered to the elevator. Got a trash truck down here in the bottom right hand corner. Also, there's a dumpster here and there's some debris that you can see around the dumpster and in the back of the trash truck. Again, more grass and weeds around the base of the buildings. The signs that you see on the end of the utility building, this is a duplication of the signs that are actually on the Oscar Eaton elevator. There's another sign right up here. It's hard to see. Another picture will show it a little bit better. But again, you got these metal fixtures here where the chutes come into the building, and the air vent here on top. You might have seeing it get rusted, so there's some rust that's streaking down the sides of these buildings. This is another view of the elevator yard. Here you can actually see the sign for Oscar Eaton elevator on the side of this particular building. I don't know that we made it like the decals that the previous gentleman was talking about, but they were very much an exact duplicate of what you actually see on the actual elevator. This would be a picture of the front of the elevator between that faces the railroad tracks and the railroad station, which would be to the left over here just off the picture. Here's Route 66. We painted the highway kind of a concrete color and got it striped. I think Lee was the one that did that. I weathered the lanes with some stains from oil drippage that might have come off of vehicles. The backboard here, you can see as a continuation of this. Now, it might not look the exact right color, but when you're looking at it in real life, you can see it. It's just that the sunlight is shining on it at a slightly different angle than what you see down here on the flat surface. But it provides a perspective of the highway moving off into the distance. We got a crew over here on the side of the road working on the crossing signals. We do have some safety cones on here you can't see in this particular picture that are behind the truck. So we are trying to be safety first conscious. Just one small little detail. You got the transformer here on the electrical pole here on the left side of the highway. Got some dead trees and debris down here in the bottom of the creek that got hung up on the railroad trestle. And I also have guardrails here on this bridge that comes in off of the highway into the grain elevator. Here's the Sayre Farm Supply Building. You can see we've got some signage that Bruce was able to include on the building facade. We've also got a dumpster down here in the bottom left-hand picture you can see, and the tractors that you might find typically out in a farm supply building that they're trying to sell. Here's a different perspective on that, and you can see the weathering of the stains running up the center of the highway as they come across the railroad tracks over here. Okay, the billboard here, we got camouflages the police car that we've got located right behind it, and we got the Route 66 highway sign, and we've also got some cattails down here in the bottom of the creek that we were able to add. I've already mentioned it, but another picture where that you can see the few dead trees both standing and having fallen. Now we also have a little rail work yard here that's on the back left corner of the module. Got some used railroad ties located right here. We got some ballast that's located here. There's two piles, or I guess there are 2 pallets of brand new railroad ties here, and then some railroad, the rails themselves located over here on this side, and they're rusted up to look like you might see new rails that hadn't been used yet that have started to have a little sheen of rust on them. Okay, here's our Rock Island Railroad Station there from an end view. And these are the guys that were involved in putting together Lee Williams and myself, Lyndall Smith, Bruce Alcock, and Doug Cook. We also had Martin Weaver and Derek Sipes, who were not able to be here for this particular picture. And that's pretty much the end of my discussion. Be happy to take questions.
I believe there's several questions on the chat there, Chuck.
Okay, let me see.
Let's say about microengineering track. What kind of track did you use?
Bruce, that was just Flex Track, or Lee, maybe you can answer that. Was that code 55?
Yes. It was actually, it's Atlas code 55 because that was what Walthers supplied with the kit, with the buildings.
Do you brush the glue between layers or use a thin spray? Well, we're just using white glue and brushing it on a real thin layer, sprinkling either the ground covers or the soil dust on, and just letting it dry, and it effectively just disappears. It's a very matte finish on the glue, so you can't really see it. Oh yeah, we did create water in the creek, and I had come across a product called Magic Water, which is a 2-part chemical you mix together, and then you can pour it into place, and then after about 24 hours it hardens. Other things I've actually found very, very useful. There are some clear caulking that might be for like a bathtub or something like that, but it is absolutely clear, and it has a shiny nature to it also. So I might actually squeeze a little bit of that into some of my water scenes to give more wave type looks to it. And we've also even used Probond glue, which is an Elmer's product, and it has a shiny sheen to it after it dries. And I've actually used that to kind of make little waves or ripples on water that might exist. We didn't really do those two techniques in this particular area because it was kind of a semi-dry creek with a little bit of water down in the bottom of it. I hope that answered your question.
Again, our next month's meeting is on Saturday, December the 10th. We'll have a good program for you. We'll give you more information about that as we get closer to it. Are there any other questions for any of our other presenters that you want to ask?
I just want to thank everybody for putting up with our technical difficulties with the link today, and we still got a good turnout. So thank you all for persevering, and we'll make sure we test the link in the future to make sure this doesn't happen again.
There was a late question. Mike wanted to know about the Oklahoma City Train Show attendance. It was 1,500 in the first day, and Bruce, do you remember what it was on Sunday?
It was about 400. We came up to 2,000 over both days.
And as far as we know now, it is scheduled same bat time, same bat channel for next year, as far as we know at this point. All right, so with that, I thank all of you for attending, and we hope to see you next month on the 10th.
Razor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wonder if you, John, and Bruce, if we can get together after the holidays and talk about the logistics about Reno.
Yep, that's fine with me.
Yep. Coordinate it with Bruce, and he'll get us all together, and we'll make it happen.
Also, just to let everybody know, we will have more information about the convention in the newsletter, because I noticed there are some people who mentioned need to investigate further. So we want to give you the information about it. And Dick, when do you think that hotel reservations and convention registrations will begin? In December?
The hotel, you can go and sign up and get your rooms now. That's online. That's been on for a while. And I'm hoping to get the registrations up and running probably give me middle of December is probably when it's going to happen. If not that, it'll be at the end of December. I want to get through the holidays first. But we do have a tremendous amount of home layouts. Most of them are not in scale, but they're all over the place. Just put it this way, I have about 18 or 19 home layouts laid up already that I'm trying to figure out how to schedule.
Great. Also, to mention the fact that I want to mention that next year is N-TRAK's 50th anniversary, and that's really the anniversary of the organization that started N-Scale Modular Railroading. And so we've got events planned throughout the year, so stay tuned. All right, I'm going to end it now. Thank you all. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, Razor.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for everything y'all do.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate the invite, you guys. If we, maybe later in this year, we'll give you another update. Thank you.